Brisbane, Australia. Welcome to David Nair on Air. Ladies and gentlemen, I understand this broadcast is telecasted through to audiences across the globe, from people from India, Australia, UK, USA, Canada, Northern Europe, Southeast Asian countries. I am thrilled and especially thrilled to have audiences from across the globe, and I'm so excited to share with you a person that we have sourced from Malaysia, and I'll talk a lot more about that individual shortly. But before I get into that, let me give you a little bit of a brief. If there are any questions, please do not hesitate to park your questions or write your questions on the chat channel, and we'll answer them as we go through this discussion. And if there are any questions that come up after this event, please do send me an email on that. And you can send the email to support@davidnair.net. Support@davidnair.net. Now, who's this guy, David Nair? As a peak performance strategist, keynote speaker, author of a book called I Excel Wired for Success, my key purpose, ladies and gentlemen, to bring key players from across the globe on air is to create a mindset shift, a heart set shift, and a soul set shift in 1 million people across the globe, thereby providing them with hope such that their generation and the next can thereafter have a better lifestyle. And I hope by doing what we're doing, we're able to do that. Ladies and gentlemen, in addition to that, we actually bring speakers from different parts of the world, primarily so we actually source them and look at how best we can bring them to fulfill the needs of the community. My main thrust has been to excel in personal excellence and get people to understand what they can do and what want to do. So primarily when I talk about models such as this, in this particular case, Justin, it is to make sure that you can role model some of the success practice habits that Justin and many of the other speakers have had. Who have we had in the past? We've had UN policy speakers. We've also had people who have come on board to work with us on other areas. Justin Victor, a person who has come online with enormous amount of credentials. Ladies and gentlemen, the credentials goes a mile long. Chairman of a organization called Befrienders from Kuala Lumpur. Senior lecturer in media and telecommunication. Member of the Malaysian Mental Health Association and Advisory Council. Member of the National Committee, Technical Committee for people going through the suicide area, and at the same time for people who have had clients, or I should say the families involved with it, that they are going through suffering, and here's a person who's trained people to look after and care for them. Member of the Public Awareness Committee for Malaysia to create an awareness of suicide prevention, depression, stress management, medical journalist. It allows me and gives me great pleasure to invite on stage Justice Victor. Welcome aboard, Justin. How are you?
Good evening, David. Yeah, I'm very well. Thank you for having me on this show. I'm looking forward to sharing a bit about my life and the work of suicide prevention. So, and hello everyone from the various parts of the world. Good to see you all, and glad that you could join and take the time to watch and listen to what's happening in this area.
Excellent, excellent, Justin. Justin, before we go down the path of getting into details and drilling down on suicide, can I get you to share your story? Being a journalist and a lecturer, what got you into this arena of wanting to work and help people who are going through this turmoil?
Well, actually, what happened was that I was looking for a way in which to help people and society beyond just my work. And I was drawing, in a sense, from what I personally found as my strength, which is to be a good listener. So thereby, I looked around and I saw this. And what happened and what drew me to this particular organization, I guess, was it was reaching out and trying to help people who are at what I believe personally at the lowest point of life for anybody, where they are at the point of wanting to end their life. People who are already feeling helpless and hopeless. So I thought maybe that would be the greatest way or the greatest place that I could help or do something, however small it was. And in going into it, it opened up a whole big world for me about mental health. I think always we have known something, I've known something about it, but only to understand it at greater depth and to see the whole issue in a national and international uh, concern. No? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was the early journey. And then, so that's now 22 years, yeah, since I've been
In
with
this,
them.
yeah,
Yeah, in this,
right.
and yeah, the involvement includes listening to people on the phone. We have a hotline, 24/7 hotline. So I'm one of the volunteers. This is all voluntary work. So there's no, yeah, stipend payment, etc. We do it
Right.
really to give something to society, to help people, to be there for people who are really down and out.
Mm-hmm.
But also the organization has given me the opportunity in sharing more, just beyond those who are already in distress, but to
Mm.
also work towards preventing people from getting too far down this road of distress.
Right.
So that means,
Right.
yeah. So we
That's
do a
that's
lot of
really good.
public.
Now we're talking about coming down that path, but before we get into that prevention stage, what are some of the trigger signals, warning signs that a person can look at if you are living with somebody who's going to go through that state?
Oh yeah. Okay. So this is part of that whole kind of adage that we have, that suicide is preventable. And
Mm.
one of the things that a lot of people are not naturally able to do is to recognize signs. So this is part of
Mm.
the work of advocacy and education. Yeah. So
Right.
right answer, direct answer to your question. The simplest sign is to see or to look for changes in behavior of someone you are with.
Right.
Just basic changes of behavior. And there are several things. You take the simplest thing of, say, eating habits. So someone who usually eats a lot and suddenly stops eating, losing weight drastically. So that's a sign. But vice versa also, if they were not eating so much and then they start eating a lot, so that could be compensatory behavior or a way of dealing with an emotional issue. So that's that are there. Then changes in mood, irritability, maybe withdrawing themselves a bit more, and then often enough, at least in terms of suicide, people may drop little hints in what they say, or even the kind of side statements that they may make. That people won't miss me anymore. If I'm
Mm-hmm.
gone, things will be better. So there will be a lot of little statements as such. So some of these, you can notice that they would be same kind of what we'd call signs of people who are just going through mental health problems. Yeah,
Right.
but
Right.
it's same thing that even applies to someone who's suicidal. So someone suicidal is largely going through some mental health problems. The further thing that we look for in someone who's suicidal is for those statements that show the intention of wanting to end their life. Some other things that people do is like you suddenly see them uh, putting their affairs in order. And yeah, I do a little joke about it in the sense of telling people when I talk to them about this is that every year I make it a point to put my affairs in order, like tidying up my house and making sure that my finances are straight and that my will is properly done. But that's all
Right.
for normal taking care of my family knows. My wife doesn't get overly concerned about my
Right.
suicidal thoughts. But if someone who's doing that on the quiet and it's somewhere out of the blue, it's good to check. Good to
Mm.
check with them what's making you do this or think about this now, that sort of thing. I'm already beginning to talk about the kind of things that we as lay people can do in the simple
Yeah.
conversations we have with those who are.
Right. We'll drill down
Yeah,
a little bit more detail there, but I
sure.
still harp in on this warning signs. Now,
Mm,
there will come a break point, obviously, that you can know it's a pre-stage, and then you go into an intense stage of, okay, I'm no good, I want to give up, I want to do this, I want to do that. Now,
mm,
how do an individual, like, say, for example, if I am out there and there's a person coming through who has got these symptoms or signs of wanting to commit suicide, how am I to identify that individual, which phase it is, and then where do I pick up a phone or source some help? How do I go through that process? Can you just share that, please?
Yeah, the initial stage would really to be to check what emotions they are going through. So you may see somebody being a certain way, and the most basic question is to check actually, and that is to ask about how are you feeling, or what is it that you're feeling, or if
Mm-hmm.
they have told you of a situation, then maybe it is to help them to understand better about what is going through, or for you yourself as a helper to understand what's going through. How is it affecting them? Are they saddened, or are they deeply saddened, or are they depressed? So there are ways to learn these things also, simple
Mm-hmm.
things of how you ask and to check on the depth of those emotions or the severity of those emotions, which will
Mm-hmm.
then give you ideas about maybe how to carry out the conversation further. So with
Right.
suicide, if there is an indication
Okay.
of I really feel I cannot go on anymore, that sort of thing. So the
Okay.
thing that's recommended, and this is actually scary for the regular person, is to ask them whether they're actually also thinking about wanting to end their life in any
Mm-hmm.
which way you can phrase it.
Right. Right.
Because not everybody feels that way. Some may just be troubled, deeply troubled, or feeling stressed out, etc., but would not have the thought. So that's
Mm-hmm.
where you one is the way to distinguish between a person who's just having mental health problem and one who's already on the brink and thinking of dealing with the mental health problem by actually ending their life. Yeah,
Your
or
life.
taking.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why
Mm,
I wanted to get this break point clear. Now,
mm, mm.
through and create this awareness in communities. Obviously, you're doing a lot of training programs and
Yeah,
such things. Um, do you have some sort of a template? Because questions are the answers, and many people don't know what questions to ask. And
yeah, yeah.
now, I mean, a person that's going to commit suicide, and if I go up to them and say, "Oh, are you okay?" Now, that's not the way to ask a question. Am I right or wrong there?
Well, not entirely wrong, but it is good to start to ask, "Are you okay?" But as
Okay,
someone recently pointed out, very interesting thing is a lot of people will just say, I'm fine," and this that.
exactly.
So what we are asking is, "Are you okay?" And when they say that, go further. That means say, "But you are looking very troubled, or you seem very troubled." So then try and open up the conversation so that what's inside will come out. Because the first question, "Are you okay?" It was even a campaign in Australia because the people were so far away from connecting people that they actually had to have a campaign to say, "Ask people, how are you? Are you okay?" So there was an
Yeah,
"Are you okay?" campaign. But the
yeah.
problem then again, especially if you talk about in Asian culture, a lot of people don't easily
Open
share
up.
their emotions, yeah, their feelings.
Yes,
They don't know, have their
exactly.
feelings on their sleeve, so to speak. Yeah.
Right.
So when you ask, "Oh, are you okay?" The usual answer is, "Oh, fine." But
Yeah.
then you should read what is going on in their face, in their emotion, in their body. So those are certain skills that one can develop on their own, and attend courses to understand that. But at the most basic level, something has triggered you to notice something in the other person as something's off.
Right.
Yeah. So then when you ask, "Are you okay?" It's a good starting point. How else will you say? So then maybe they will say. But if they don't say, then you would go on to ask them a bit about what you are seeing that's happening to them. I noticed that you are looking very tired, or notice that you are looking kind of sad or down. Would you like to tell me about it a bit? Yeah. So that's the way to take it
Mm.
further. And the
Now,
idea
now,
is to open up the conversation with them.
yeah, that's opening it up. Now, the point is here when you have a situation like that, and you start questioning or drilling them with the W questions, I call it. From "Are you okay?" You expand it out.
Yeah.
Now, when you expand it out, do you think they can be personalizing it if you drilled in on a behavior pattern that you've identified, or a pattern of what they have not been doing and are doing now, and your concern is, okay, they're going down the wrong path? Do you think they could be inflicting more pain in them that they might jump into actually committing the suicide?
Okay. So that's a common question. It's often been phrased like, if I bring up the idea or the question about
Exactly.
suicide, does
Huh.
it make people then think about actually doing it
Hmm.
to themselves?
Hmm.
So all of the research shows that this is not the case. Not the case. All that it does is it makes it easier for them then to talk about something that most people don't dare talk about or don't dare ask about, which is
Mm.
actually their thoughts about wanting to die. So you'd be surprised, you could ask a person even like postpartum blues. Many of the mothers actually feel like wanting to die,
Yes.
though it's not actually going to go on to self-harm in any way. But
Right.
when you ask is when you will know. And
Mm.
the research shows, all of practice and research, extensive over many, many years, show that asking does not and cannot plant an idea.
Mm.
Of course,
Mm.
you could do, if you're straining on them and then pushing them and doing like a Guantanamo kind of brainwashing,
Right.
of course you can get
Right.
somebody to kill themselves. But
Yeah.
here is, if you are just asking, it doesn't plant the idea. What it allows is the opening up so that they can talk about it. They can bring it
Mm.
up as something that you will be willing to listen to. Because
Mm.
what happens often enough is people shut you down when you say something of that intention. The
Yes.
general person, well intentioned, but they say something that's, yeah,
And
just
and and
shutting.
exactly, when you come down to that situation, now let me expand the thinking here a bit. Why suicide and the feeling would that person have if he's going to commit something like that? Would that be have been there for a period of time, or would that have been instantaneous, or is it a point at which they're saying, "Okay, enough is enough. I'm just going to give up"? Is there a way we can gauge that? Is there any statistics or things that you have experienced from your work with them?
Well, statistics in this area is kind of difficult to say exactly at which point, but uh, at the most basic level, you are saying that nobody instantaneously thinks of wanting to
Mm,
end their life. Yeah,
right.
something of their processes of thinking have led them to that point.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
can be anything from stress or even mental health problems, from other kinds of problems, like say having depression, clinical depression, actually, yeah, schizophrenia, various kinds of things. All those can actually lead a person to have and play around with the thought of this wanting to end their life. But often enough, it comes at, at what often enough is use these two terms that we will hear always in suicide prevention, suicide help, the sense of helplessness and
Mm,
hopelessness. So when
right.
somebody comes to the point, they are as if they are blinkers, of the horse, and they cannot see any other options for their life. So
Mm,
then, if there is no way forward, then one of the things that they might entertain is wanting to end their life. Yeah.
right.
I,
I- 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 yeah, in your workshops that you're conducting, awareness for the layperson, we call it within inverted
yes.
commas.
Mm.
Are you actually conducting workshops, so to speak, for people who have gone through cases such as this and identified it so they can overcome their overwhelmness? For example, if they have got too much to do and they can't go any further, they got the back to the wall, that's when they say, I'm going to sit my hand.
Yeah. Your question is whether how
You
we
have
approach.
yeah, you approach that for the party, for the individual
Mm.
going through that case.
Yeah. Um, when you say about having sessions or workshops, etc., it's often to a wider audience, and we wouldn't say those who have been through or have had feelings of wanting to end their life, please come and attend. Because
I'm
often
sorry. Let me reframe that. Let me reframe that question. It's not a group workshop. I'm talking about a one-on-one counseling.
one to one, okay.
Yeah.
Um, so on one, we would always start with what they are feeling, what they're going through. And
Yes.
then in the process of that discussion or the conversation, really, the main effort of, at least from the Befrienders point of view, which is a lay helping effort, or you could say the public effort, is to just get people to open up and let out the feelings. Because one of the kind of related feelings of the person who wants to end their life is this, like as if it's in a pressure cooker, it's just
Mm-hmm.
building up and to the point of you're going to implode or explode. So in the conversation, when we show them that we are concerned and we ask them to talk about their feeling, there's a little bit of that relief that is coming about in them. Yeah. And this again is true experience. You'll find people actually changing in their tone from the time we start the conversation to the time we go on and end the conversation. That
Right.
pressure cooker thing is opened up, and then a lot of the things is coming out. So when that happens, then those blinkers often up can come off the person.
Right.
Then there's less of a helplessness or a hopelessness. At the very least level, they have a clear sense that somebody is concerned that they do not end their life. Then in the conversation, sometimes it may come up also that together we might explore some options for them, so helping them to see their own situation a little more clearly. But actually
Right.
that happens, for the individual on their own. As soon as
Yes.
the pressure is released, there is clarity, of a little more, at
Huh.
least clarity of mind and thinking.
And to create this pressure release, what are some of the things that the individual, in this case the caller, would be sharing with the person that's going to commit suicide? What are some of the things that he or she can do? What I'm trying to do is get the audience to get a perspective of that
Yeah, yeah,
and be
yeah,
aware of it to help out.
yeah. So I mean, it isn't a very complex. Well, it could be complicated to some. The formula, or if you want to call it a formula, is first ask how are they feeling about a particular situation. Often enough, what happens to a lot of us when we talk to somebody who's distressed, troubled, etc., we are focused on the problem that they are
Right.
going through. That means the
Right.
kind of incidentals or the attendant circumstances around them. Very
Uh-huh.
seldom we talk to them about how they are feeling about those circumstances and how
Right.
the circumstances are affecting them. So if we
Uh-huh.
jump to the problem, sometimes, of course, there could be straight out solutions to the problems, and that's where family, friends also can give people some ideas. But
Mm.
sometimes these people, especially those who come to that brink, have
Right.
already tried everything they know and everything it's possible to deal with the problem or the issue.
Right.
So then here, our help is in getting them to realize how that issue is affecting them, hurting
Mm.
them, pressing them down. So what's the point, you might say, in that? There is insight for the person about what is happening to them. It's like the person who comes into your office one day, David, one of your staff, and then they come bang the table. That blah 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 person took my parking space, and they're just going on ranting and raving about it. And you could say, okay, let's find you another spot, but you're not attending to them what the person is going through. But if you
No.
told them something like, that must have made you really very angry, and I'm willing to bet you will see that person's temperature dropping
Subside.
and cooling down,
Yes.
subsiding. Yes. So that's the very thing. So remember, I tell you, when we do that, then people can, of their own, have a little more clarity of what they need to do for themselves. Then that
Mm.
sense of helplessness or hopelessness becomes less. Of course, no magical thing that it can happen just like that in one shot. Huh?
Mm.
But the idea is that in that conversation, even as friend to friend, you can bring that down a bit more. But there is, of course, a line where professionals need to come in.
Yes. I'm
Mm,
just about to ask that question. When do
mm,
you draw and when do you call on this external professional help
mm.
at?
Yeah. So, when in a way that, first of all, you need to know what you yourself are capable of and
Mm-hmm.
what state you are in. And that's very, very important. So, the first thing is you're showing caring, and that anybody and everybody can do. And you
Yes.
do a basic i- show your intention of caring by asking them how they are feeling or what they're going through. Then, when they start to tell you about something that sounds a little more complex and you know what to do, that's when you need to call in the professionals or get them,
Okay.
not call in, but really to get them to go and see and seek out professional help.
Would they be open to that? A lot of them?
Some are, some are not, and that then opens up the whole big area of stigma and
Yes.
misconceptions of
I'm going to park stigma for now.
yeah,
We'll come to
yeah,
that. But
yeah,
how
yeah.
do you steer this person to need to go and source professional help? How do you steer that person? Again, type of questions you ask.
Yeah. Well, I
Is
think
it
at the most basic level is to offer to help them to get this help, at least in searching out for how, where, who, etc. Then the other is, of course, to listen to what are their objections or apprehensions about that, about seeking professional help. So then you can address that, and that you don't need to be a professional of any sort.
psychologist?
Yeah,
No.
that's right. So if you say so things like, "Oh, where will I go?" Then you help them to look for the help. I can't afford it, but then there are also free, at least in Malaysia, there are a lot of free help in mental health also.
Mm-hmm.
Then whatever is the objections, or you try and deal with that to get them over, just to take the first step to the mental health professional. And you
Right.
can do things like bargaining with them. Try it out. Just try it out at least, once. See how it goes, whether it helps. That sort of thing is very good.
Right.
And if they're close enough, maybe for you to at least accompany them, not into the consultation room, but at least to find that office or something of that sort. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Mm.
What percentage of this discussion or talk is via the phone, and how much is face to face?
Okay, you're talking about my particular center and our work. We are wholly doing that only on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a hotline. So that's entirely by phone. Some of what I said is what you and I or others
Okay.
will be
Okay.
doing with their friends or family or colleague or something of that sort. For
Understand.
us,
Understand.
all of it is completely on the phone, right up to the point of actually suggesting where they can find these kind of help, and also talking about those kind of things like what are the apprehensions, getting over the objections to help seeking, which is a big thing. Yeah, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people are just discussing something. Why is it so many people are resistant when you tell them, hey, this is available, or I can help you, or somebody can help you, but they'll say, it's okay, I'd rather not. So maybe that is where you don't give up. But again, there's a fine line between not giving up and then bugging them to the point of,
I was going to ask you, where do you draw that? How do you
yeah,
push them across? And
yeah, yeah. Ultimately, any of this, even the thing about taking one's life, is individual decision. Yeah. So we got to give people that respect. Uh, but on the other side of the respect is the caring, and there is just a difference between a push and maybe a coaxing. Yeah.
mm-hmm. So the language that
Between,
you use is vital.
yeah.
Are the callers trained to address it from a linguistic perspective, or are they just work it based on random?
You mean the helpers, huh? Not the caller.
Yes.
Caller is the person
Yes.
with the problem. Yeah, the
Sorry.
helpers. Yeah, at least for our center, because it's kind of like a formally organized center. They are
Mm-hmm.
training that the befrienders, the volunteers who are on the phone, have to go through to be able to
Mm-hmm.
carry out the conversation and how and where you take it. So there is definitely the elements of the way you phrase things, how you say things. Yeah, the linguistic elements are there, very important. Yeah, the
Okay.
tone
Okay.
all comes in. Yeah.
Right.
Mm,
And
mm,
even the language, for example, in Malaysia being
yes.
multicultural, and
Yes.
the
Yes.
cross pollination of languages is vital.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
Um, Coping mechanisms.
Mm.
What could some of the coping mechanisms, now that you've gotten, I've called in, I'm getting help and counsel, and I've not given up yet. I don't want to go and see anybody. How would you put me into a coping stage, to cope with some things that I'm going through?
Mm. Again, if you're just talking about from the perspective of the way that befrienders do it, or in UK and all known as Samaritans, it's really not to go too much into that element, which is more on therapy already, working on
Mm-hmm.
coping skills, etc. But if anything, as part of the conversation would be to ask and to affirm with the person coping mechanisms that they have already been using. And what happens is
Okay.
often enough they have forgotten. So a
Mm-hmm.
simple thing would be like, say, how did you manage this 5 years ago? Something like that. So
Mm-hmm.
then that would bring up in them how they may have coped or overcome whatever it is that they were doing
Right.
before. So this
Oh,
often a lot of people forget when they are in the depth of their misery and suffering. They are
right.
pulled into the present, and they forget all the resources that they themselves already have. You know, yeah. But further, the other kinds of things, then it goes beyond our scope as untrained. We are trained, but not professional therapists as such. Huh? So
Mm-hmm.
then that one requires, like, say, people to actually go to a professional where they can get a regular help over a period of time, where then process can be worked on, of helping
Okay.
them to develop whatever it is that's going through. But at the most basic level, again, they say we are not also as befrienders or these volunteer helpers, not totally helpers, because we can help them by just asking them a bit about how are they coping it with it themselves. How have they coped with it themselves? So this
Mm-hmm.
brings up then some other things, and we can affirm that. See,
Mm.
oh, that was very good. That that really worked well. Yeah, yeah.
At this
So how do you
point,
see it?
yeah, at this point, if I can get you to, without mentioning names, uh, share a circumstance or a story of, what a really bad case of where a person had come in the crisis state. I want to relate not to the situation, more to the state, the mental state of
Mm,
that patient, I call it, and
yeah.
then what and how did your counselors help them out of it? Can you share an instance or two?
Uh, okay. Well, I guess a very common one is about right now this sense of losing your job, and
Mm-hmm.
in the pandemic time, and then the sense of debts building up, and you know possibly not being able to provide for your family. So something like that is, again, I wouldn't be betraying confidence by saying, because it's kind of
No.
common thing experienced by several people.
Right.
So if you listen to this, what I've just said, it is sounding like, on a practical level, a hopeless situation. Because
Yes.
I, as the listener, have no idea all of the possibilities that that person has in terms of their skills, their other support systems, whether they can get loans. All of those are immense. And it is not our job, at least in the hotline, the helpline that we run, to be able
Mm-hmm.
to deal with that or to be dealing with that. So we just then try and get them to a state where they are a little more calm, a little less frazzled by what is going on. See, the feeling of worry or fear may not go away in talking to a person like in a helpline, but it won't seem so immense as soon as one has articulated it and just
Right.
knows that people are concerned about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then that is the first step, and a very simple, small step is just getting the person to be resourceful on their own already. There is some thinking, and I may not be an absolute thing, is that the solutions to all the problems that we face are within us.
Mm.
Some of those gurus say something like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I would lean to believe some of that to some extent,
Right.
which is then my role as the helper is right now is to show you some empathy, say that there are people who care about you, and then let you to talk about that frustration, that feeling of I don't know what to do next. And this is a very real thing, because a lot of them who are going through this have nobody to talk to about it.
Exactly.
That
Exactly.
pressure cooker thing is building up.
Mm.
That
Mm.
pressure is building up because it's just nobody to say it out to, because they either don't want to load on this to their friends, load this on to their friends or family, or they're feeling a low self-esteem. How can I tell people that I'm in such a condition? Yeah.
Mm.
So these kind of things could happen. I remember somebody another time who's a disabled person, and he was saying about how when he first got disabled, he lost his job, lost everything, and that he just had to um, couldn't even find sustenance to live on a daily basis.
Right.
but because of the job or whatever position they had before, they cannot even reach out to ask for help. And so
Mm.
they're talking about that kind of thing, of a sense of being trapped, etc. Yeah. So then our role at that point is to really just talk to them, to let them say it out, what all the frustration they're feeling of having become disabled, how the struggle is, etc. All of which they haven't had a chance, or don't have a chance to say, or to talk to somebody.
Well, let me just take it one step further. Are you actually looking at specific outcomes? Let me use this illustration here. I'm coming in, I got a problem. I have financial issues because I lost my job. Do you actually provide a form of a roadmap to say, okay, how can you come out of that? Here are options, and option one, option two, option three. Which of those would best suit you? And then from there, take them up to the next one. Do you actually go through a roadmap such as that?
No, not us, and not in our organization. Yeah, but this is
Mm-hmm.
something anybody else could do, but
Right.
not particularly our work. Our work, then, if you say what is the end goal, is to get the person in a better state, emotional
Frame of
state.
mind.
Yeah, frame of mind, emotional state, so that they
Mm-hmm.
can better deal with their issue. At most, would be asking them, maybe, what have you thought about doing, that sort of thing. So maybe a bit of exploring with them, but not much on that, because then it goes into areas that would need process time beyond which we are able to give. And again, just the way the system is set up for us, we are volunteers, we work at different shifts, so to link back to that same caller in person is not easy.
Mm-hmm. So,
There
so in a
won't be
case like
continuity.
that, yeah, sorry, in a case like that, do you have another organization that you can point them to for that support to continue? And
Yes.
so,
So
if
yeah. So
so,
that
successes are coming through because they have been given some clarity of thinking, moving on from where they are to, okay, I can see some sunlight there. I have got that path. And now let me go and talk to person Y to get that help.
yeah. So that is something we can do. So we help them to look up maybe possible other non-government organizations or societies, or even some government efforts given to help people. So we have listings of such things, and maybe we would help them and suggest that they could talk to these people, etc. But we were careful not to quickly push them onto that, as if we don't deal with them
Sure.
on a personal level. So the extreme important, like say, prime, prime objective is to deal with their emotional state first.
Mm.
Yeah, get them in a better state. Then, when it comes to these practical issues, then we have some organizations or groups that we can refer them to.
Refer them to. Right.
Mm,
Emotional releases that we talk about now.
mm.
What sort of time gap do you look at? For a caller has made a call, your volunteers are talking to them. What is an average length of a call to walk them through and come out of that state?
It varies depending on the intensity of what is going on with them, and their situation. No, so at a simple level, a lot of people can be quite relieved after maybe 15 to 30 minutes. Yeah, then the others who would maybe be an hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours, if they are at that moment already at the brink, feeling suicidal, talking about actually doing something at that moment. So then the conversation can go on for much, much longer. Yeah, up to about an hour at least, sometimes into an hour and a half. Yeah, because we do get people who are what we call active, imminent. That means they're doing it right now, or they're about to do something to harm themselves.
Hmm.
Um,
What are the preventative work that you're conducting out in the community to avoid this bottleneck here? You've gone out to the community to create an awareness out there that if you're suicidal or this is happening, these are
yeah.
some things you can do.
Mm.
What sort of work is out there currently to alleviate the number of suicidal calls that are coming in? What have you done there?
Okay, so just us, we have been doing these sessions for various groups, mainly
Mm-hmm.
those who have been asking us. And this is on few things. One is either a simple talk in just raising awareness and understanding, and it could be slightly longer sessions, which are what we call workshops, where people would actually go through some process work. And often enough, it is for a dual purpose because, again, people who attend are not always free or comfortable in telling us about what's going on with them.
Right.
So often enough, I would say I'm glad you're here because some of you may be actually going through this, but some of you may be wanting to help somebody else who's going through this. So then both, either to help yourself or to help somebody else. And you ask specifically, then depression would be the most common kind of thing. First of all, to
Mm.
understand what is
Depression.
going on with somebody who's depressed, how to
Mm.
identify somebody else who's depressed, and the basic help for anybody, the layperson, is no different from what I've already shared with you earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, ask them how they are, get them to talk about their feelings, and maybe even go on to ask about whether they are feeling at the end of the road, wanting to end their life, wanting to kill themselves. This is an important question not asked often enough, which indicates and marks really the intensity of the depth of whatever it is they're going through, be it the heights of stress or the depths of depression. Yeah. So which brings them to the point of actually feeling that they want to end it. Yeah. So it's important to ask that. Just asking and being allowed to speak about it is already helping to prevent
A
it.
cure. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Not
Mm.
entirely, but at least it's a start.
Right. Right. Now, when they get to that state, you have the callers who are obviously experienced at different levels. Now, when a call comes in, how are those screened so it goes to appropriate types and experienced callers rather than somebody who's just a novice and being thrown into the swimming pool?
There's no way to channel it, at least in the way, because we are a hotline. It has to be whoever's there at that time,
Right.
and all are trained for the various aspects. Of course, you would have the junior ones, but the system is such where we have usually some partner or supervisor who they can actually refer to if they're really stuck.
Is somebody overseeing or hearing this call so they
Not
can butt in? No.
not on normal, not on normal.
Okay.
Initially, in the
Okay.
training, there is. Yeah, there's a supervisory training which has that kind of system.
Mhm.
But after that, then people are on their own, and often not because again, no, as a voluntary kind of effort, the boundary or the level to which we need to go or can go is clear to the volunteers, which
Right.
is don't
Right.
don't try and start doing psychotherapy because we're
No.
not trained for that. No,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Our main role is captured in most of our publicity material, etc. Says emotional support. Yeah, but the value of it is, from experience, has been immense. Yeah.
Right, right. Well, have you had situations? I'm sure you would have, but I want to ask this question: where people had their back to the wall and they're at the verge of, going to do this now. How would a person handle that?
Yeah. So again, I mean, from
I mean,
to
to
talk.
talk to the person out of it, how would you
Yeah.
handle that?
Yeah. Again, it sounds almost simplistic, but actually, just go back to ask, what is it that you're feeling right now? What is it that's brought you here? So get them to talk about what has brought them there, what has made them to
Would they be
this point.
open? Would they be in a frame of mind to do that?
Often enough, they are. Yeah, they are. It may not be fully coherent, so that's where maybe then, in part of our process of speaking, it involves clarification, what we call reflecting back, summarizing. So you mean that when you say this, do you mean that blah blah blah? It goes on. So all those things are what the trained volunteer does. And again, often enough, part of the conversation is asking the person to step away or to distance themselves from the means, at
Mm.
least for a little while we have this conversation. So it could be to throw away that material that they're going to use, to step away from the dangerous place, to put away that tool or whatever it is they're going to use. I'd rather not go into specifics because that's against
Yeah, I understand that, and I don't want you to do that either.
yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, it's to distance themselves from how they are planning to actually do or end their life. And it's kind of a bargaining in a way, because in a way that action is not impulsive, but it is not 100% decided intent, to want to end their life. So if you can distance them away from it for a little while, then hopefully we can again, bring down, subside the emotions that are stressing them out or pressing them to this point, get them to think about, and then in that way, it's an infusion of some hope or helpfulness is seen. Something can be done, maybe. Yeah. So again, it's just bring down the temperature so that they can see clearer about what's happening with them.
Yeah. I know. I mean, I was put in a situation on Friday, not suicide wise, but the stress of a small unit of people that were working because they missed a date, and all of a sudden, it was. Let me open and tell you what it was: arrangements for a wedding, and you know how much people spend and time and effort in getting a wedding going, and all. 45, that the arrangers who were supposed to lay out the wedding party and all that had completely missed the date for a week later. And the bride and the groom were panicking, I mean, and so they had to pull in resource. Yes, they had to shift the time, but see, this is what I'm saying, the clarity to think that through in a life and death situation. You won't be cognitive enough to do that. And that's why people go and commit suicide. So what I'm trying to figure out is, how can we reduce that? In this case, it was easy. We went ahead and organized extra manpower to come in and get the hall done. But in a case like that, how do we mellow down that emotional intensity to such a state that to say to them, hey, breathe, everything is okay.
Yeah. Well, at the basic level, you got to, again, like, it's somewhat akin to the person who's called us, who's at the brink, is to take them away from that edge for a moment. So that means pull them aside, give them a breather, ask them what's happening, try and get behind it. If this is going wrong, what is it doing to you? Yeah, maybe why are you so worried about such a thing? What makes you worried about such a thing? Something like that, So those kind of things.
Yeah, Justin, I've been drilling around this on question. Do you have a general template of Q&A type of things that without any specifics?
Yeah, not specific.
I'm asking that is there will be a lot of people out there who might be interested in wanting to just at least keep that, One for the person that's going through this case, and the other for a carer who wants to take care of a loved person. Can they talk rather than go to that stage of saying, I want to kill myself, I want to get rid of my life.
Yeah, there may be some online. I'm sure you could find, but such a thing is not best to read and then follow. So it's best that you have heard or discussed it in the learning process. I'm talking about the one who's the helper. You can't just read and follow a template because it doesn't work that way.
It's not a cure, but it's just creating that awareness. I didn't expect it to be a cure. Please don't misunderstand.
Yeah. Not even a cure, but even at the most basic level, how to carry out that conversation.
Exactly.
Parts. I don't have it readily myself. Training program even doesn't have a template per se, but we have broken down into sessions on which areas we focus on, and we have practice sessions, which is very important.
Yes.
On how to carry out those conversations. YouTube is the great source, of course, nowadays for everyone to look up and see model conversations, maybe to get an idea of how this can be done.
And are you conducting online sessions for the general public awareness, such as that? Online,
yes.
Conversational online, so they can plug in and say, okay, I want to watch that and get some exposure to it?
Yeah, well, our center and actually there are 8 other centers in Malaysia which do these online sessions from time to time. In those two aspects that I mentioned, one is just awareness and
Mm,
understanding of various mental health issues, and the other is actually some basic skills training on how to carry out the conversation, how to ask about suicide, and those are there. And those come up from time to time. You could, I guess, look it up in our website, yeah,
right,
and our
right. See,
Facebook page, and yeah,
okay, good. If you could, probably downstream send it to me and I'll push it out in a broadcast
sure,
to, the
right,
public.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Why that is important is in a normal conversation, in a day-to-day conversation, people make a lot of mistakes on how they say certain things, the tonality in which they say, and
Yeah,
that in itself is enough to aggro a person. Imagine a person in this frame of mind that wants to kill himself, and then you turn around and talk like that, and it doesn't in any way going to help the case. And so, what we need to look at is how can we get that communication in such a way that it is not mellow, but it's still firm, not stern, but firm, and at the same time guide the individual out of the situation that he or she is going through.
mm,
That that's my point. That's why I'm revolving
yeah,
around so much.
yeah,
That's a
I,
skill that is
yeah,
acquired from experience, and that's where
yeah,
you get having workshop sessions that awareness can be created for people who
yeah,
are going through that,
yeah.
and Sarah or the person that's loved, who's living with that person or next to that person, can do something to help.
An important part of that, if you want a kind of a general guide, is to note in what is your own state, the one who wants to help, your
Mm,
own. I'll give
mm,
you for instance, like the situation you gave, and say if you are very agitated, not you specifically, David, but
yeah.
someone who's
Yeah.
very agitated and irritated
Mm,
by seeing what you would consider stupidity in their
mm,
actions,
mm,
you are going to get all worked up,
yeah.
and you will not be able to deal with them, however well intentioned you are to bring them out of their issue or their problem.
Yes. Yes.
So you got to watch your state, or understand your state, and the state at the most basic level must be calm,
Mm,
must be patient, must be
mm,
understanding. Seek
mm.
first to understand, even as Kavi
Yes.
and all of that.
Exactly.
So that kind of thing is the starting point of the helper. You know, if you are finding yourself agitated by what the other person is doing, like say even someone who's threatening to kill themselves, it can bring up the ire of the family or the loved one
Mm,
because they think it is a stupid action.
mm.
And then your whole way of dealing with them would be to come on, don't be silly, yeah, put that thought out of your mind, and then you're not helping anymore.
Right.
So you got to be a calm, neutral position first, and always respect the other also in terms of what is going on with them. That
Mm,
they are. It is valid for them to feel that way because it's
mm,
their feeling.
mm,
Someone who
mm.
blows their top by not having their coffee brought to them in the morning,
Exactly.
for you it's no deal, no big deal, right?
Mm,
But for them it
mm.
is. But if you tell them, hey, come on, don't be silly, you just need a coffee, you just
It's
go
only
and get
coffee.
yourself. Yeah, or it's only
Exactly.
coffee. It's not
Mm,
helpful. Not
yes.
helpful. Yeah.
Yes. See, that's
So
where the tonality is so important, and the manner in which the conversation needs to,
yeah, yeah,
be progressive.
yeah.
Why also another reason why this comes up is, I mean, having the pandemic has not helped a lot of cases, but
Mm,
parts of the world have had very high divorce rates. South Africa, as an example,
yeah,
as
yeah.
60%. Now, one of the things, this is pre-pandemic. Now, with the pandemic, what happened was husband and wife used to only see one another for, let's say, 4 to 6 hours maximum an evening. But now they're 24/7 with one another. So that whole explosion, the tsunami just opened up. Okay. So pre-suicide, there is a phase that they go into, which is now getting to domestic violence. So they get in this domestic violence scenario, and a lot of cases have been popping up. not just in South Africa, but in other countries also. Now, what happens? The guy's back is to the wall, or the girl's back is to the wall, and he or she is saying, enough is enough. He's a narcissist. I cannot handle that. I'm going to kill myself. Now I get the call, or you get the call. What are you going to do? I mean, scenarios that you hear.
Yeah, well, that is a tough one, because it is an absolute truth that our life is designed in such a way that we need some space from each other, whoever we
Yes,
are, to be able
exactly.
to deal with
That's
things.
what human nature is all about. You need that
Yeah,
space. Yeah.
yeah. So again, I mean, it may sound repetitive, but I'd say same thing. Just ask them what is happening, why they're feeling this way. Maybe get to them understanding better what are the triggers that the other person is triggering in them. And through their own insight, maybe they will be able to do something. Because in a situation like that, there is sometimes no practical situation help. They cannot not be with each other because of the lockdown, because of losing their jobs, etc. So the size of the living place, etc. All of that are, some of them are not changeable. You can't do anything about it. So the only thing left is actually to deal with the person itself, or help them to deal with their situation. And what's the starting point? Ask them what they're feeling about it, then explore options. Is there another way that maybe you could have talked to him, or you want to talk to him or talk to her? What if you did this? Maybe you can ask them that. Yeah, you mentioned this, so then you give them also some insight about what is happening with them, maybe just from what you hear from them.
Right.
And then that insight will be what they can themselves use to either change or move about or deal with specifically.
Right. Let me just draw on your 2.5 decades of experience working in this arena. One of the things that you also would have noticed is pre-pandemic. Let's stop, prior to last year. Pre-pandemic, and when you first started, the number of suicide cases have increased. Yes or no?
I think there are no hard facts to that effect. Yeah.
Okay.
Someone put it quite interestingly. They said before the COVID-19 and the pandemic, people had problems, and some people didn't have problems. Once the COVID came and the pandemic came, lockdowns came in, people had problems, their problems became worse, or they felt it as worse. And those who didn't have had more problems now. Okay. And then
so what you're saying is, let's say from 2000 through to about 2018, there has not been, in your opinion, a rise because of work scenarios, because of the affluent nature in which people live, generation 1 to generation 2 differences, that has not in any way caused suicide numbers to rise?
Could be, but also to understand that all of the research in general, I can tell you, those who actually come to the point of either attempting or actually dying by suicide have some mental health problems prior to that. Some would say as up to as 80% already had mental health problems of some sort, depression, either identified or not.
Can you identify in your, because of running short of time, I'm pushing questions at you. Can you identify about 4 or 5 of these mental health issues? Depression is one, obviously.
Yeah, depression, bipolar disorder, anxieties, bipolar, borderline personality disorder, schizophrenia. So these are all mental illnesses per se. Of course, depression, we use it very loosely for someone who's just sad for a long time, but it has to be properly diagnosed whether it's clinical depression or not. The few others that I mentioned have to be clinically diagnosed by a mental health professional. But generally, they say those who actually come to that point have had some of this, and the more common one is depression.
Right.
Yeah, the common etiology.
Normalization of the suicides. When we look at that, normalization of mental health care, I should say, the stigma attached to that. address this. I wanted to do a bit of time with that, but we are running out of it. Um, how does that create a disadvantage to the guy that's wanting to, or person that's wanting to take their life away? How is that?
It is an immense problem, this whole stigma issue. So it works in several ways about the people who are, how people view the person who is struggling, and the person who's struggling itself, how they view themselves. And the stigma can be a block or hindrance to help seeking. So people don't get or don't go for help because they think then they will be labeled. But on the other
Mm,
side of it, people do label those who go for help, mental health
mm,
as being crazy, or
mm, mm,
worse words sometimes. Yeah. So all of those
mm,
things can block the mental health seeking behavior, which is
mm.
extremely important to be able to deal with an issue. So if you have
Right.
a bad pneumonia or chest pains or whatever, you'd go to see a doctor and there's no issue about it. But
Right.
when it's a mental health issue, either the family is afraid of what people will think about them, or the person individual doesn't want people to think about them negatively,
Mm,
because people again also think of them negatively. So all of
mm.
that is this issue of stigma, and it's a big issue, at least in Malaysia. I think in many other parts of the world, maybe only the
Oh
Western
yes,
world is
it's a big
able to
issue in a
control.
number of
Mm,
countries. I mean, bipolar,
mm,
for example, is it's
yeah,
across the countries in so certain countries that I'm
mm, mm,
and working with,
yeah,
and
and
that's been a huge
yeah.
victim. Sorry, a huge cause for divorces to happen.
Yeah,
And it's
and lack of what do you call understanding, education about mental
yeah,
health is the root of it. So a lot of
exactly.
people would say, you know, my family is treating me this way, that way, and they're not supporting me, and they're thinking I'm lazy, I'm a loser, etc. And largely because the family doesn't understand it, they really think that the person of their own accord is just being a goof off or a loser. But they don't
Mm,
understand. Some of them can't help the way they are feeling
right.
because it's a mental health issue, a mental
Yeah.
illness. Yeah,
Mm,
the illness part is not appreciated by family and friends,
mm,
employers.
mm,
Yeah, yeah. So
mm.
sometimes. Mm.
Hey, Justice, I'm so sorry. I need to cut you very short because we've gone
Yeah,
past the time.
no worries. Yeah,
I didn't realize,
yeah,
1 hour just
yeah,
run through.
yeah,
What I would really like to do is, downstream, we will talk in one of these areas of mental disorder, and bring that across to people to see how we can curb suicide cases.
yeah.
But more importantly, can you just sum up what we've just spoken so the audience out there can look at some key points to take away, and they can say, okay, if a patient is this, I need to do this. If a patient is that, I need to do this. Can you just very quickly, in probably 30 seconds to 1 minute?
Okay, all right. That's a
I'm putting a
tall
timer.
ask. Yeah. Can do something at the most basic level to help somebody else. And it begins with asking about how are you? Are you okay? But don't stop with the answer when they say I'm fine. Go on further. Focus on their emotions and feelings. How is this making you feel? What is it making you, feel or go through? How is it affecting you? So those kind of things. Bring that out. Allow them to speak it out, say it out, etc. Be mindful of your state. You need to be in a calm state when dealing with a troubled, distressed person. A very good, quick guide that I have found myself is actually on a website. If you can catch it, I'll tell you very quickly. It says take five, the number five, to save lives. Take five to save lives. Yeah? And on that website, you will find these various steps. Learn about mental health disorders and how or what are some of the symptoms. Help yourself, take care of yourself. Learn where to get help for these people, or where to send them for help. Tell others also about this helping to you. So there are all the steps there in this take five to save lives.org. I think I've beyond 30 minutes, 30 seconds.
Excellent.
Okay.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Hey, Justin, thank you so much. Truly appreciate your time and effort and your knowledge and 2.5 decades of experience working with victims of suicide and their related ones. Appreciate it. Once again, thank you. We will catch up with you soon. Take care
Great.
now.
Thank you for having me on the show, David Nair, and all the best to all of you out there. give your hands to those who are in need. Best.
We'll do that. Excellent. Thank you so much. Bye bye now.
Right.